Conventional wisdom dictates that spiritual awakening is a gentle ascent, a path paved with peace, light, and transcendence. Carl Jung, however, uncovered a terrifying counterpoint. He realized the ultimate stage isn't about achieving holiness, it is about achieving wholeness. This profound integration paralyzes the human psyche far more than any external threat. Such a transformation demands a sacrifice few are willing to offer. Not the renunciation of vices or even the reduction of the ego, but the absolute surrender of one's fundamental innocence. The majority of seekers stall here, content with what offers immediate comfort. They meditate, practice gratitude, and surround themselves with positive affirmations. They confuse this aesthetically pleasing phase for authentic evolution. Jung identified this phenomenon as spiritual bypassing long before the phrase was coined. He observed patients who believed they had reached transcendence only to realize they had merely constructed an ornate prison of light encircling their unexamined darkness. The true initiation had yet to commence. In his personal journals, Jung recorded a perilous truth. Some patients achieved the final stage, others suffered complete psychic breakdown. The determining factor was neither inherent intelligence nor sheer willpower. It was the individual's capacity to withstand what he termed the great despair. This is the harrowing moment when the entirety of one's life structure ceases to cohere. Every lauded achievement feels utterly hollow. Every intimate relationship stands exposed as a deliberate performance. This is critically different from clinical depression. This is the brutal awakening to the fact that one has been meticulously performing a life prescribed by others. To grasp the depth of Jung's discovery, we must revisit the source: his clinical practice in Zurich. He routinely encountered patients who were paragons of social success. They possessed stellar careers, devoted families, and meticulously adhered to every societal convention. Yet they sat opposite him, articulating a profound void that no external success could mitigate. These were not clinically depressed individuals. They were souls suffocating beneath the weight of a life that was impeccable in appearance, but internally inert. Jung recognized that these patients were navigating what he would term the dark night of the soul. This was not a mere poetic metaphor. It was a psychological crucible designed either to utterly destroy the individual or to forge them into a being that transcended contemporary psychological explanation. He began charting the specific, repeatable stages visible in those who successfully traversed this dangerous terrain. What lent Jung's findings their profound danger was this core realization. The ultimate stage of awakening is neither safe nor comfortable. It does not manifest in peaceful meditation retreats or structured spiritual workshops. It unfolds within the wreckage of your prior life. It happens when every pillar you built collapses. It happens when you can no longer uphold the elaborate illusion of who you pretend to be. The inevitable descent begins with the collapse of the persona. You may have invested decades meticulously constructing this social mask: the dutiful child, the esteemed professional, the dedicated spiritual seeker. The fit was so seamless you forgot it was an artifice. Then, without discernible cause, the mask fractures. You become incapable of performing the defining rituals of your existence. The career that provided identity feels meaningless. The spiritual routines that once offered solace now feel utterly hollow. Friends who once energized you now drain your capacity completely. Jung designated this the death of the false self. Yet the experience is not one of gentle rebirth. It is experienced as sheer annihilation. Conventional wisdom dictates that spiritual awakening is a gentle ascent, a path paved with peace, light, and transcendence. Carl Jung, however, uncovered a terrifying counterpoint. He realized the ultimate stage isn't about achieving holiness, it is about achieving wholeness. This profound integration paralyzes the human psyche far more than any external threat. Such a transformation demands a sacrifice few are willing to offer. Not the renunciation of vices or even the reduction of the ego, but the absolute surrender of one's fundamental innocence. The majority of seekers stall here, content with what offers immediate. You become profoundly alienated, a stranger wandering through your own life. People sense a fundamental shift and ask if you are well. You reply yes, because the truth is too unsettling to utter. You are watching your entire identity vaporize, and you are powerless to halt it. You are isolated in a way you have never known. This acute isolation is deliberate. It is preparation. Your persona was never just a social ornament, it was an intricate defense system guarding you from the most terrifying insight of human experience, that beneath the achievements, roles, and meticulously crafted narratives resides a core darkness you have spent a lifetime evading. Jung named this force the shadow. The second phase is the harrowing confrontation with the shadow. This is the crucial point where most individuals retreat because the shadow is far more than accumulated flaws or past mistakes. The shadow is the visceral realization that you harbor the capacity for every cruelty, every betrayal, and every act of cowardice you have ever condemned in others. Jung demonstrated that we externalize our own darkness, we project it onto the world as a mechanism to avoid self-recognition. We accuse others of manipulation to mask our own tactics. We denounce selfishness to deny our self-serving impulses. To be unequivocally clear, the liar you judged, you embody that capacity. The friend who betrayed you, that potential resides within your own soul. The narcissist who exploited you, that pattern lives within your shadow. Every quality you despise in others exists within you, not merely as potential, but as an operational reality. You have already enacted these things, perhaps not physically, but in the secret chambers of your mind, in desire, where true self-permission is granted. The ultimate stage compels you to withdraw every projection. You cease blaming parents, you cease blaming your partner, you stop blaming society. You look into the mirror and grasp the devastating truth. You are not a victim of darkness. You are darkness skillfully masquerading as light. This step is perhaps the most arduous because it utterly obliterates the shield of moral superiority. You cannot remain the good person judging the bad people. You must become the whole person who fundamentally contains both the saint and the sinner. Empaths aren't broken, they are alchemists in the midst of transformation. Jung recorded the manifestations of this shattering clarity. Patients recalled moments of stunning recall, a time they manipulated someone, framing it as helpful guidance, a time they inflicted pain, labeling it as necessary honesty, a time they abandoned a friend, calling it establishing boundaries. The shadow never reveals itself as obvious evil. It unveils itself as every action you took while simultaneously convinced of your own goodness. This explains why the majority of spiritual seekers abort the journey. They have too much invested in their self-image of goodness. Their entire identity rests upon being more evolved, more conscious, or more enlightened than their peers. The shadow dismantles this entire construct. It proves you are not more evolved. You are simply more proficient at concealing your darkness. You are not more conscious. You are merely more skilled at systemic denial. You are not more enlightened. You are only more entrenched in the conviction of your own superiority. If this realization has ever ripped through your awareness like a blade, you are not failing. You are breaking through. But the pain does not abate. In fact, it intensifies. The confrontation with the shadow is merely the preamble. The third phase is the death of the ego. Not the sanitized version offered by spiritual teachers, where you gently transcend the ego through mindful meditation. This is the brutal version, where the part of you that demands to be special dies agonizingly and screaming. Your ego is more than simple vanity or hubris. It is the fundamental psychological architecture that imposes order upon chaos. It is the insistent voice that asserts, "I am this, not that. I am good, not evil. I am enlightened, not ignorant." Jung documented this phase as genuine psychological death. His patients reported the terrifying sensation of dying internally, even as their physical bodies continued to function. Every point of self-identification dissolved. Achievements became irrelevant. Knowledge held no weight. Spiritual progress meant nothing. They were left with nothing but raw, unfiltered existence. No defining narrative, no intrinsic meaning, no established purpose, just the terrifying freedom of being alive without knowing why. One of Jung's patients captured this state. "I woke up one morning and realized I had absolutely no idea who I was. Not in a curious way, but in a paralyzing, terrifying way. My name was a meaningless sound. The face in the mirror was a stranger. My entire life felt like a script written by someone else, and I was forced to perform it. Everything, beliefs, career choices, relationships, was revealed as arbitrary, random, and meaningless. This is the existential void against which spiritual teachings offer warnings, but provide no true preparation. This crisis cannot be resolved by positive affirmations or structured meditation. This is the realization that everything you presume to be real is a mere construction. Your personality is a construction. Your core values are a construction. Your entire sense of self is a narrative meticulously woven to shield you from the terror of being nobody. Most cannot withstand this void. They scramble desperately back to identity, adopting a new mask, fabricating a better story. They mistakenly label this new identity as awakening, having done nothing but rearrange the furniture inside their psychological prison. The truly individuated refuse to fill the emptiness. They inhabit it. They allow the process of death to be completed. They accept that they are nothing, nobody, no fixed thing that can be claimed, named, or defended. Jung defined this as ego death, yet he was meticulous in separating it from psychosis or mental breakdown. In psychosis, the ego shatters, and the result is an influx of chaotic forces. In authentic ego death, the ego dissolves, and what remains is an expansive spaciousness. You are not losing your mind, you are losing your identification with your mind. You are not descending into insanity, you are waking up from the insanity of believing you are the incessant voice in your own head. This phase can persist for weeks, months, or even years. Jung documented patients who spent entire seasons in this liminal state, incapable of reverting to their former selves, yet unable to step forward into anything new, suspended between death and resurgence. And here is the discovery that most contemporary psychologists still resist. This process is not pathology. It is transformation. The caterpillar must achieve complete dissolution before the butterfly can possibly emerge. There is simply no available shortcut around the process of dissolution. The fourth phase introduces the union of opposites. You abandon the desperate attempt to be exclusively good. You fully integrate the reality that you are simultaneously light and shadow, creation and destruction, love and hate. This is Jung's concept of individuation, not becoming a better person, but becoming a complete person, a holistic self. And this is precisely why it is dangerous. A whole person is immune to manipulation. They see through every game because they have intimately understood the rules of every game themselves. Here is what this looks like in practical terms. The individuated person is not nice, they are kind. Niceness is an often dishonest performance. Kindness is an authentic state of being. They do not force a smile when they are angry. They do not feign agreement when they disagree. They refuse to pretend interest in matters that genuinely bore them. They shed every social script that demands they be less than fully honest. This behavior generates profound discomfort in others. The individuated person establishes boundaries that appear brutal to those accustomed to exploiting them. They issue a decisive no without providing justification. They exit conversations that deplete their energy. They sever contact with toxic individuals without experiencing guilt. They will not participate in familial dysfunction. They refuse to enable your victim story or rescue you from the natural consequences of your actions.
This is not malice. This is wholeness. When the shadow is integrated, you understand that enabling stagnation prevents another person's necessary growth. When the ego has undergone death, you are no longer defined by the desperate need for external approval. Having unified your opposites, you possess the capacity to be fierce or gentle, depending entirely on the demands of the moment. You are liberated from the tyranny of needing to be consistent. You are free to be profoundly appropriate. Jung observed a fascinating attribute in those who reached this plateau. They developed what he called a dangerous presence. Not dangerous in the sense of volatility, but dangerous because they could see through every social mask. They could perceive every lie. They could sense a manipulation before it was even fully deployed, and they could no longer be deceived, not by others, and certainly not by themselves. This deep clarity renders them notoriously difficult dinner guests at conventional social functions. Small talk is unbearable, as they instantly perceive the dance of competing egos beneath every exchange. Networking becomes impossible because they cannot feign interest in purely transactional relationships. Dating is rendered bizarre as they penetrate every carefully constructed performance within the first 5 minutes. They know who you are beneath your presentation, and they need nothing more from you than that unfiltered reality. The complete person is not striving to transcend their humanity. They have entirely accepted it. They know they are simultaneously selfish and generous, wise and foolish, cruel and compassionate. They make no attempt to isolate only the palatable parts. They assume ownership of the entirety. This radical ownership forges a specific kind of power that cannot be fabricated or taught. The profound power of authentic reality in a world predicated upon elaborate performance. This is the transformation that the majority of seekers desperately avoid, for wholeness demands relinquishing the coveted identity of the good person. It means accepting that you contain saintliness and murder, loyalty and betrayal, courage and cowardice. You are not polarized, you are the integrated tension between the opposites. This unification makes you unpredictable. It renders you ungovernable. It makes you profoundly free. Consider a truth Jung only confided to his private journals, omitting it from his public works. He personally navigated this terrifying process. His intense confrontation with the depths of the unconscious, spanning the years 1913 to 1919, constituted his own perilous descent into this final transformative stage. He documented a torrent of visions and dreams so radical and intense that had he shared them openly, he would surely have been committed to an asylum. He suffered the death of his professional identity, the terrifying dissolution of his ego, and the dizzying freedom of utter self-oblivion. He returned fundamentally changed. The shift is palpable when comparing Jung's work before and after this dark night of the soul. Prior to it, he was simply a brilliant psychologist. Afterward, he emerged as something far greater, a mystic, a reluctant prophet, a man who had traveled to the psychic underworld and returned bearing an unspeakable knowledge that defied direct articulation. For the rest of his life, he labored to construct intellectual maps and leave conceptual breadcrumbs, hoping to ease the solitude of others who followed him into the darkness. Yet he understood the central, unavoidable truth. The final stage of transformation cannot be taught or guided. It can only be lived through. No instructional text can prepare you. No guru can shepherd you. No clever technique offers a shortcut. You must endure this journey completely on your own. You must embrace the terror personally. You must undergo the symbolic death of the known self, and you must be willing to surrender entirely
without any guarantee whatsoever that you will ever return whole. Yet Jung documented a profound paradox. Individuals who attained this final stage ceased striving for awakening. They stopped concerning themselves with enlightenment. They let go of the need to be special, evolved, or distinct from others. They simply were. They existed without demanding intrinsic meaning from existence. They lived without requiring life to adhere to a predefined purpose. They loved without insisting that love must endure forever. The ultimate stage culminates in the return. Following the complete descent into darkness, the dissolution of the ego, and the unification of the opposites, you re-enter the world. But you are not the self that departed. Jung characterized this as the return of the hero. However, this hero is not acclaimed. They are often feared, because you now perceive what others remain blind to. You feel what others suppress. You know what others staunchly refuse to acknowledge. You remain placid amidst chaos because you have already touched the bedrock of despair. You are dangerous, in the most beneficial way, because you cannot be leveraged by the threat of loss. You have already surrendered everything. You cannot be seduced by earthly power, for you recognize power as a brittle illusion. You cannot be corrupted by pleasure because you understand its transience. You have become the awakened empath, impossible to manipulate, impossible to control, impossible to break. The internal struggle ceases, not because you successfully fixed yourself, but because you utterly accepted yourself. You no longer battle the shadow. You no longer deny the darkness. You integrate it. You become it. And in becoming it, you finally transcend it. This is the paradox Jung unearthed. The only road to light is first to become the darkness. The only way to achieve wholeness is to shatter entirely. The only way to truly awaken is to die while still breathing. People who reach this stage describe a strange, abiding peace. Not the peace of having everything solved, but the peace of realizing it can never be solved. Not the peace of achieved enlightenment, but the peace of recognizing there was nothing left to achieve. Not the peace of becoming whole, but the peace of realizing you were always whole, and the fragmentation was merely a fabricated story. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But he knew the staggering price. Most people will never pay it. They will live and die within the confines of their persona. They will project their shadow until their last breath. They will cling to their ego even as it suffocates their spirit. They will never reach the final stage, because the final stage demands a capacity most humans cannot summon. The willingness to be nobody, the courage to be nothing, the strength to let everything you thought you were die, so that everything you actually are can finally be born. This is a path not intended for the many. It is reserved for the few who cannot turn back, the ones who have seen too much, the ones who have felt too deeply, the ones who can no longer sustain the pretense. If you are reading this and feel a sharp tightness in your chest, you are one of them. You are in the descent. You are fully immersed in the Nigredo, the blackening, experiencing the necessary death that must precede any true psychological rebirth. Understand this: you are not broken, you are not failing, you are not regressing. You are entering the final stage, the crucible. This is the rare destination that most people never approach, the state Jung termed individuation. It is the stage where you finally cease performing the identity imposed upon you by the world and awaken to the being you authentically are. This is the most dangerous psychological journey precisely because the terrain is unmarked. No external guru can walk it in your stead. There is only you, the vast darkness, and the slow, terrifying realization that the darkness you are confronting is fundamentally you. But beyond this black void lies an experience few ever attain: true freedom. Not merely the freedom to act as you wish, but the absolute freedom to be what you are, without apology, without explanation, and without needing external validation or understanding. You become the living embodiment of the concept Jung dedicated his life to articulating: the self, the psychological totality, the unus mundus, the ultimate union of all psychic opposites. It marks the cessation of the internal war between your authentic being and the person you felt obligated to become. And here is the profound truth that often remains unspoken regarding this final stage. Existence does not suddenly become easier. You do not bypass human suffering or transcend everyday problems. You will still feel pain, experience loss, and grapple with anger, sadness, and fear. However, your relationship to these raw human experiences completely transforms. You are no longer identified with the emotion. You feel them fully, without allowing them to define you. Emotions are experienced like weather systems passing through, intense, undeniably real, yet transient. The individuated soul does not attempt to bypass suffering with spiritual platitudes or conceptual defenses. They feel the entirety of the pain. Crucially, they cease constructing narratives around it. They do not demand, "Why me?" or search compulsively for explanatory meaning. They simply allow pain to be pain, grief to be grief, and fear to be fear. And in this spacious allowance, a minor miracle occurs. The emotions flow rapidly. They do not stagnate and calcify into trauma. They transform back into pure, unfiltered experience. Jung termed this dynamic process the transcendent function, the sophisticated ability to hold two opposing realities simultaneously without needing to force resolution. You can be utterly devastated and fundamentally okay in the same moment. You can feel profound fear and execute courageous action. You can possess complete uncertainty and deep confidence simultaneously. You stop desperately trying to define yourself as a single, static entity. Instead, you become the boundless spaciousness that contains the entirety of your complex, paradoxical self.